Hey everyone, in this video we will discuss about the Plasmic workflow and the headless API approach. So if you are new to the Plasmic editor, also known as the Plasmic Studio, it's a browser-based tool which helps non-developers and developers to design different pages and components in Plasmic Studio, which can then later be used in the code base by the developers. So there are primarily two approaches to basically use the design components in the code base. The first one is a headless API approach, and the second one is Codegen. So in today's video, we will discuss about the headless API approach and the workflow around it. So first of all, let's assume you have created a project in the Plasmic Studio, and let's assume you have designed a basic component with name button, and so now we are using the headless API approach, which means all of the component styling and the component metadata, all of that data lives on the Plasmic side. And we now need some kind of utility or some kind of library that will help us fetch those components from the Plasmic Studio and render them in our code base. So that library is known as loader. So it is provided by Plasmic for multiple platforms, for plain React, for Next.js as well. So the responsibility of loader is to basically uh, fetch those stylings from the Plasmic Studio and render them back into the code base. So the way to do it is basically divided into multiple steps. First of all, we need to initialize the loader and then call multiple functions, which include uh, fetch component, and then basically we can basically override the component props using that particular API. We can discuss the loader in more detail in a separate video. For this video, we need to focus just on the abstract level API, that is the abstract workflow of the headless API. So we need a loader component, a loader library that is basically responsible for fetching the component styling from the Plasmic Studio and then rendering those components into our code base. So the key point here is that the actual component and the styling lives on the Plasmic side. It lives on the Plasmic server, and the code base has a particular library installed that is responsible for fetching those components and styling for us. So once that step is configured by the developers, the designers can now do or publish some changes to this particular component, and it will automatically be rendered in our code base. Let's now discuss the deployment workflow and how it works and how the changes are reflected afterwards. So let's assume you now have deployed your nice little button and your component on Vercel or any of the hosting platform, and it's now visible to everyone in the public. So a designer has done some changes to this particular button. Let's assume he had changed the button to underline. As soon this change is done and published from the Plasmic side, there is no developer involved, and the changes will reflect automatically on the website. Because we have used the Plasmic Headless API, it will fetch those new changes from the Plasmic Studio and render them back on that particular website. So the advantage of using a Plasmic Headless API is that once the developer has configured the workflow for the non-developers, for the designers, then every new change that the designer do in their website will automatically be reflected on the live website. So let's recap the workflow of the Plasmic Headless API. So the first step is to design some components and pages in the Plasmic Studio. The second step is to install a Plasmic Loader library into your code base, which will help us fetch the component styling and the component data dynamically at the runtime. And the third step is deployment. So once the developer deploys the website to the public, it's now available to everyone, and every new change that the designer do in the Plasmic will now be reflected in the live website. So the main advantage of headless API approach is that once the workflow is configured, then the designers can publish the changes directly to their live website. So I hope this helps, and thank you for watching.